Hello and welcome to Bock Chicken Fantasy. Today I've prepared a document that shows the projected point totals for each position, each round, averaged out. So this way, if you're, let's say, drafting a running back in round 1 versus round 2, how much do you lose in points per game per round? Let's get into it. So let me start out by kind of explaining how this is laid out and why it's laid out this way. For instance, with quarterback, it's showing you 20.65 points per game, fantasy points per game. That starts in round 4. No quarterback gets drafted in the first, second, or third round in the rankings that I'm using currently for half point PPR. The running back starts in round 1 because there's Christian McCaffrey, Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs. They all go in that round. So the average, and yes, I do realize that they can be a lot more points per game than that. Obviously, plenty of running backs did that. Same thing for wide receiver, same thing for tight end, same thing for QB. But this is just based on the projected point totals for each player in the rounds starting out. That's what it is when you average them. Same thing for wide receiver here. It starts at round 1, 14.07 points per game. Tight end starts at 9.78 average points per game, starting in round 3. So that's why it's laid out that way. So we're going to start with round 1, running back and wide receiver, since there's no quarterback or tight end in the first round. So the first thing you notice is the difference between drafting a running back in the first round and the second round is about 6.1%. Roughly like 1.4 to 1 point per game, depending on the player. So nothing to really write home about. You're probably losing about 17 fantasy points over the season, right? If you average it. So if you're losing only 1 per game, there's 17 games, you lose 17 points. Now, wide receiver drops off 18.6%, almost 20%. It actually is 20% in full PPR. If you do the same calculation, you lose 20% of the production just from drafting a wide receiver in round 2 rather than round 1. So you can kind of take this 2 different ways. You can say, hey, well, running back is really important the first 4 rounds because the production is pretty close. It's 10% by round 4, so you could probably argue that, 10% still not so bad by comparison. It usually takes 4 rounds, if you look at it, to go from a RB1. By the time you get to 5th round, that's 17.7% drop off. It's still not even the same drop off from wide receiver from 1 to 2. So you can take it as grab my RBs early because they're dominant in the first 4 rounds. Or you can take it as if I don't draft a wide receiver in the first 4 rounds, I'm done for. Because you can see how much it drops off. It's 18.6%. And then from there, you're only getting 76, almost 25% by just the 3rd round and 4th round. And literally it's 30% drop off by round 5. It's insane. Even look at quarterback as well. Quarterback's the same thing. It takes roughly 4 rounds to get that 20% drop off. Same thing for tight end. It takes roughly 4 rounds. So this year it is super important, the way I take it, to get a wide receiver in round 1. And probably the 2nd round and the 3rd round. So let's start by going over the quarterbacks and kind of tiering them off. So when you're in a draft, whether it be like a best ball draft or your home league, where if you want to take a really quality quarterback, what rounds would that be? What would be the first tier? Now, obviously, the ones that come to mind are Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, things of that sort, right? Lamar Jackson. So, and they all start in the 4th round in that area, 4th, 5th round, depending on if they fall or not. So I would say the top tier, I would probably include all the way down to round 8. Now, I know that it looks like a pretty big drop-off on round 7. Round 7 is actually Kyler Murray. I don't know why the rankings don't like him very much, but I feel like he has that same potential upside with the rushing ability that it should probably be similar to what you're getting in round 8. So I'm going to go ahead and just make an executive decision to call him somewhere in the same range. Again, you're roughly within 10% if you put him up to like 89% of what you're getting in the first round. So I would say if you're wanting a really decent quarterback, it's going to be all the way down to right about here. So rounds 4 through 8, you're basically getting the same value or close to it, that there's not that much of a drop off. And then from there, your next tier is going to be the gentleman here from round 9, I would say, to about round 12, right about there. And that would be your second set. So depending on your draft strategy and how you want to break it down, if you like doing quarterback late or you like having one quality one in the first tier, know that you can kind of wait and hold on to roughly around 8. And then from there, it drops off pretty bad. I actually go all the way down to around 18, but it's not even worth it. So I would say the third and final tier of decent quarterbacks is all the way right about here. Let's break down the running backs next by tier. Like I was saying before, I would say round 1 through round 4. Those are roughly the same. Obviously, 10% is a discrepancy. It's not nothing, but I would say arguably that 1 through 4 gives you a solid running back, an anchor running back if you like doing that, or if you want to do double RB, taking one in the first round or second and fourth, however you want to kind of arrange that and do it. I think that would be optimal because it drops off pretty good after that. The second tier, I would probably say, is 5 through 7. I know it's a pretty big gap between 5 and 7, but it's not too much of a difference. It's less than 10%. So if we're going to use the same kind of tier as tier 1, from 100 to 90, I would say that this would be the second tier. The third tier, I would say, is going to be anywhere from 8 to 11. That would be the third tier. And then everyone else, I would say it's more like an upside shot. You're just trying to, you're getting a handcuff. You're hoping for some upside out of a rookie. Any of that would be the final tier, which is anything basically below 12. 12 and below. I think 12 actually has Zach Charbonnet in it, which he's like the anomaly in that range, if you will. So that would be the everybody else range, which is tier 4. Next up, we have wide receiver. I'm not going to list out all the wide receivers. There's too many, and it's hard to count and do all of them and get them all to fit on the page. But we'll start with the tiers here. I'm going to go on a limb and just say tier 1 is around 1, because those guys are in a league of their own. And as I pointed out in the beginning, it's almost a 20% drop off. Well, it is in PPR. So that would be tier 1 is just literally round 1. It's such a significant difference. Tier 2, I would say, is from round 2 to round 5. Me personally, I normally draft, especially with my best ball drafts, first 4 rounds wide receiver. I do think there is, it shows a 6% difference there between round 4 and 5. It's more actually between those 2 rounds, it's almost 8%. And same thing for the round after that, just between the 2 rounds. Like it's 8% less from 5 to 6. But I like 1 through 4. I feel like 5 could be considered part of the next tier, but it's close enough that if you like some of those guys, you could stretch that and say 2 through 5 is tier 2. After that, you actually kind of see there's a drop off on round 7, and then it goes back up. So I would actually say that's where some good value is for you, is round 8. So I would say 6. We'll say round 9. I think that's fair. I know it's close enough, but it starts getting into another tier there. I think that when you start looking at the players and around in that range, you'll see what I'm talking about. But I would say 6 through 9 for sure. So that would be tier 3. And then 10 through 12. Is another tier break there. And then there's pretty much almost everybody else. At this point, you're taking shots on people. There are still some good guys spread through there, depending on how you feel. Some older vets, players of that sort. But really, you got tier 1 by itself in round 1. Tier 2 is 2 through 5. Tier 3 is 6 through 9. And then tier 4 is 10 through 12. That's how I would break that down. Last but not least, we have tight end. And there's some good value at tight end. Definitely the one tier I would say to start off with is definitely round 3 where it starts through round 6. And if you look at round 6, there's actually only one tight end that goes in round 6, and that's George Kittle. And he is such a smash, because if you're telling me that I can skip round 3, 4, and 5, and I actually get as good a tight end as I could get in round 4, that's crazy to me. Like, why would I not just auto-click George Kittle, except for the fact that you might think, hey, he can get injured. But with the fact that, like, Ayuk might leave, and then, you know, the injury bug hits Debo sometimes, or CMC's already hurt, you know, for him to get more volume potentially, man, he's such a smash. So for me, that's one tier, and I definitely like round 6 tight end. The next tier from there basically goes from round 7 all the way, we'll call it 12. So you can see that tight end stays pretty consistent, unlike the other positions where it starts dropping off in like multiple tiers. It almost stays steady the entire time until basically after round 12. After round 12, it's just dart throws basically. You know, hopefully, you know, you basically, if you're drafting all your wide receivers, quarterbacks, and and running backs in the first couple, like the first 10, 15 rounds. Sometimes I do that in best ball. I'll draft 3 tight ends, last 3 picks. So I just stock up on everything else to make sure I have good quality players there and just punt the tight end. And that's basically what I do is after round 12, just punt the tight end. But if you want to grab one, I sometimes will do that too, is just grab one in either the first tier or the second tier. That's basically it. That's where I grab my like one tight end, and then everyone else is just whatever I can find that's left over, right? Just like at the end of Thanksgiving, like whatever's left in the fridge, that's what I'll take. So to kind of finish up everything we just looked at and went through with the tiers, what this actually shows you is a graph you can see along the left side is actually how many fantasy points per game you're losing. And then the rounds are at the bottom. If you look all the way across here, these are the rounds. So for instance, you'll see, as we talked about earlier, this is round 1 because only running back and wide receiver have people that are drafted there. And then you can see as like round 3 for tight end, round 4 for quarterback. So the rounds are here, and then you can see how steep the fall off is for the points per game. So for instance, gray is wide receiver. Green is running back. Blue is quarterback. Yellow is tight end. So the tight end stays pretty steady. Like the way it doesn't just tank off like I was telling you towards the end just there. But wide receiver is so dramatically, it's just such a dramatic drop from round 1 to round 2. So after today, I'm going to come up with several videos where we go round by round. We'll do quarterback, running back, and we'll see, as we see that value drop, whether the player there deserves to be in that tier or if it's dragging the overall, the average down, which is the case and with some running backs, some wide receivers, and even some tight ends. Just like in the round 1, Christian McCaffrey. His overall points is like 300, right? Whereas the next best running back is like 250. That scales it way up. It pushes the average way up. So for that being an example, that's the plan going forward, is having videos going through that, especially trying to crank these out before the season starts. So if you're drafting, you have the most accurate data. And thanks for stopping by. I appreciate y'all hanging out and checking out the video. If you have any questions, please comment. I'd love to answer any questions you might have. And make sure to like and subscribe. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.